Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
Through the holiday, we were told Jeremy Corbyn was preparing a reshuffle of his shadow cabinet. The talk was of a revenge reshuffle, Corbygeddon. Perhaps a lot of that chat got out of hand, but today the reshuffle got going, and yet amazingly, nothing has been announced. There have been comings and goings. Hilary Benn and Maria Eagle went to speak to Mr Corbyn, but they've said nothing about their positions. Does that suggest they're still in the shadow cabinet? Or has the leader not finalised his decisions? Or has he been stymied in his desires? It does seem he's not gone for the nuclear option of sacking his cabinet opponents forthwith. But then nuclear options were never his thing. Let us hear about the day and the dilemma for him from our political editor, David Grossman.
Opposition frontbench reshuffle. 3 words that don't exactly scream compelling must-see drama. Labour, after all, has just lost a general election. Surely only a few sad obsessives much care who's being promoted or demoted this far from the next one. But actually, stick with us, because this opposition frontbench reshuffle is a bit different.
Why? Well, in this reshuffle, some say there is a battle going on for the whole future and heart of the Labour Party.
Labour's shadow Foreign Secretary might not be the biggest Ben in Westminster, but Hilary Benn grew in reputation markedly after the Iraq debate last month. One problem though, he was saying the exact opposite of his leader. For that reason, one of Jeremy Corbyn's closest political friends told me Mr Benn can't stay in post.
Imagine in Tony Blair's premiership, if Momo, the Man Northern Ireland Secretary, had come out and said, I'm opposed to the Prime Minister negotiating with the IRA, he would have moved her. And Jeremy's been, I think, very tolerant about dissent and disagreement. But I do think there's a problem if your front bench spokesperson is disagreeing with you. I mean, if Hilary Benn had been the Environment Secretary, it wouldn't have mattered him taking that position. Instead, all we had was days of media speculation about, is this a leadership challenge? Is it an attempt to undermine the Prime Minister? It's another Labour split. And what we're trying to do desperately is just get back onto focusing on key issues like the economy.
We must now confront this evil. It is now...
What particularly irked Mr Corbyn was the reaction in the chamber to Hilary Benn's speech. The cheering, the applause, appalling jingoism, the Labour leader called it.
It's the leader's prerogative, it's their right to pick their own team. Of course, that's the case. But I think it would be a great shame to move a politician who is completely competent and equipped to do the job of Shadow Foreign Secretary on the basis of a disagreement on a free vote, not a whipped vote, but a free vote.
One of Mr Corbyn's key advisers told Newsnight that this is emphatically not a revenge reshuffle. More, it's an attempt to establish some coherence in some of the Labour Party's policy positions, namely defence and foreign affairs. But in this, is there an admission that Mr Corbyn's plan to usher in a new style of politics based on grown-up disagreements, open discussion, has failed?
On the basis of that intelligence, the other name in the frame then is Maria Eagle, Shadow Defence Secretary. She favours renewing Britain's nuclear deterrent. Jeremy Corbyn, of course, does not.
You are working with Maria Eagle on this defence review. If she were removed midway through that process, or even at the beginning of that process, what would that say about that review?
Well, it's only just starting, and I mean, we're going to focus on facts.
The current episode of Labour's drama may well be concluded sometime tomorrow, but the wider story of the battle going on inside the Labour Party looks set to run for a few seasons yet.
David Grossman there. We'll hear with me Aisha Hazarika, former special advisor to Harriet Harman, Danny Finkelstein, Conservative peer and columnist in The Times, and Owen Jones of The Guardian. I mean, Owen, can you make sense of what's happened today? Why there was all this talk about a reshuffle and then nothing happened?
Well, it's not entirely clear exactly what's happening, I suppose, but hopefully by tomorrow it'll be a tad clearer. I think what he has to do, though, I mean, you know, the essentials of what he did when he came to power were right in terms of the shadow cabinet, even though it was done in a very chaotic way, because that whole team were not people who've spent years preparing for power with a big professionalised team around them. It's quite a unique situation. Where they went wrong in particular, I thought, was, and I said this at the time, was the lack of women in those top 4 positions. There's lots of very capable women on the back benches and on the front bench team, and I think what should happen now is an attempt to redress that balance, particularly with the top 4. At the same time, I mean, I find this navel-gazing on behalf of the Labour Party on all sides actually bleak, because we have a Conservative government now which is going to preside over cuts to universal credit, which are going to hammer middle-income and low-income families for the next few years. We've got large swathes of the country being flooded, partly, and we'll see more of that because of cuts to flood defences. We have a government in alliance with a Saudi fanatical dictatorship, which is a threat to the security of our citizens, and instead we're talking about the makeup of the Labour front bench.
Do you blame Jeremy Corbyn for that and his team, or do you blame us and the media and the Twitter?
I think it's a bit of everyone, and I think, you know, everyone. I think obviously what has to happen now, above all else, is the Labour leadership have to focus on creating an inspiring, coherent alternative that resonates with middle-income, low-income people, communicated in a way that people understand. And you know what? I think part of that is definitely where I can see the problem with Hilary Benn, a man I have huge respect for. But it is an odd situation when on matters of war and peace, the leader and the shadow foreign secretary are facing in different directions. So I understand the need for coherence. That should have been addressed obviously earlier on, but it was a chaotic first few days, weeks for that matter. But they've got to focus now, above all else, on an inspiring alternative that's credible.
In a word, are you saying he should sack Hilary Benn, or are you not? I'm not 100% clear as to whether you...
I'm open-minded about that. I mean, I can see the point about, you know,
understand. No, I said
putting in a woman, and I think Emily Thornby would be a very good example of someone to be a good shadow foreign secretary.
I'm going to come to Aisha, but Aisha, you've already made a film for us about women. We're going to show it later, so I want to kind of keep off the women thing for the moment. Danny, should he sack Hilary Benn?
Definitely. Yes, Ken Livingstone is right. The leader of the Labour Party has to have... Ken Livingstone is right. The leader of the Labour Party has both the right and I think the duty to create a shadow cabinet that can reflect his views. And in particular, Jeremy Corbyn has got an anti-imperialist view of foreign policy. That was one of the reasons why he got elected leader. He has to have a shadow cabinet that and a leadership that reflects that. And he does not have that at the moment. He was forced into the free vote against his wishes, and immediately after that happened, I said he has to have a shadow cabinet reshuffle. He's right to have it. He'd be wrong to back off doing it.
Aisha, would that not cause a rebellion in the centre and the left, the centre and the right of the party?
Would. There'd be a huge impasse in the party. He absolutely should not sack Hilary Corbyn. Hilary Benn. Corbyn has got credit for trying to do things differently. He should have a broad tent shadow cabinet, and he's also got the best talent within the PLP who are willing to serve under him. And I think it's very ironic to have stood on being new politics and inclusive and then sack somebody because they voted against you, when actually Jeremy Corbyn has rebelled against the whip many times.
What does Labour stand for on foreign policy if the leader of the party and his foreign secretary, shadow foreign secretary, don't agree on the core foreign affairs issues?
But Jeremy Corbyn is not going to agree with many of his PLP and shadow cabinet on many big ticket items because he didn't win the support of the PLP. He's won the support of the membership, but not the PLP.
Understand. So, Owen, can the party exist with this broad church approach at the shadow cabinet level? Because that's the bit that looks very messy.
Yes,
you can disagree with your parliamentary party, but you...
Of course, within obviously limits. I think there is look, when Tony Blair moved Robin Koch as Foreign Secretary in 2001, he wasn't purging Robin Koch. He was simply on the basis Robin Koch had differences of opinion, which actually erupted, of course, most dramatically in the aftermath of the Iraq War. Emily Thornby, by the way, she's no Corbynista. She supported Yvette Cooper during the leadership election. She supported the bombing of Iraq. The difference is those differences would be more manageable. Right. I think when you have a leader and a shadow foreign secretary facing in different directions on issues of war and peace, it's difficult. But I have to say, you know what? I oppose the bombing of Syria, but I do think at the moment the priorities facing this country are issues of domestic policy and this constant focus on foreign policy issues. And you know, all sides have to take a bit of responsibility.
The key thing is he's not dependent on the PLP, and the PLP, the certain part of PLP isn't going to support him. They want him to go. So what he's got to do is make sure that he keeps with the activists and with the members who elected him, keeps faith with the reason why they elected him, which is for a strong, coherent left-wing platform. I happen to think the country won't want that, but he thinks they will, and he has the right. He's won the right to put that to people.
If you lose literally half the shadow cabinet as a result of taking your kind of advice, then you've got a problem.
I think only a portion of the PLP would go as far as to rebel against him, and those people are completely incapable of being bought off by him keeping Hillary Benn. If he keeps Hillary Benn this time, they will bank the fact that he's been weak. They'll bank the fact that he nearly sacked him and didn't. They'll assume that they can push him on other issues, and he will then get worse with those people, not better.
He is weak because he doesn't have the support of the PLP anti-shadow cabinet. His best bet, and actually the thing that is frustrating, and because so many people have contacted me saying this, we should not be starting 2016 with a massive story about a Labour reshuffle. This was not necessary. This was talked up over Christmas.
They had a rail announcement to make today, and they've distracted.
As Owen said, there's lots of big things that are happening. The doctors are about to go on strike, floods, etc. And actually, they should not have talked this up and then got themselves into this position.
We're going to return to the women issue in particular. And Aisha, you made a film for us, and we'll be discussing that later. Thanks all very much indeed.